Yeah. Okay, so we have started. Rose, I was wondering, could you tell me, who are you, what do you do, and how do we know each other?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, my name is Rose. I use she, her pronouns. We've known each other, I think, stalking each other on like Instagram far too long. But I think in terms of like when we met, I'd say like children in the age of like 10-ish. We met via, I'd say, the homeschool community.
Where and ballet. Yeah.
Oh, we did do ballet.
And I spent a lot of time at your house each week with your sister, which I absolutely adored.
I do remember that.
Yeah, I would say, you know, there's certain people and things you do as a kid that really stick out to you as like really core memories, and I would say your house was one of them, and like being taught by your mother, who's a wonderful ballerina teacher, as well as many other things. And it was really fun to like see you in another class with my sister, who's a little older. So you guys would hang out, and me and your sister would hang out, and then there was a lot of intermixing of
there was
playing.
So much intersection happening
I know,
like, different areas of our lives. So it was just this, it's a constant sort of thing that's like, oh yes, I know them from this and this and this, and it just translates to this.
I know, and here we are. It's so great, which is the best part about Instagram, because I didn't see you for years after that. And then, and we'll get to what I saw you doing on Instagram after that. But I was wondering if you tell us just generally what you do. And
yeah, I work in market research. That is my 9 to 5. That is not what feeds my soul, but it provides the financial ability to find other areas that actually do feed and nourish my soul, such as teaching. I am a certified yoga instructor. So I know. Me and like a bunch of other white women.
Yeah.
But
it's so true.
Yes, but it's been very nourishing, and the reason why I made that decision this time last year to pursue something like this, and very much on a whim, it was like, I've never been to this yoga studio before, but 2 people told me this was the place to go. So I'm not going to go check it out. I'm just going to go sign up for the sessions, and it was great. It was beautiful. It was a lot of different environments that challenge you physically, but also mentally, where you really have to sort of look at your practice, look at the foundation of yoga and like how far it stems, and like how do you make sure you're not culturally appropriating, but also making sure that you're bringing the essence of what this could mean and what it does mean to other communities without making it the cueing of the wellness benefit.
Yes, things can definitely go into that world in America a lot, because it's very much like, hey, let's make money off of this beautiful practice.
Capitalism pops off all the time. Like,
doesn't it? It doesn't it?
They do not need much to be able to like sneak in right in there. But that's what feeds my soul, and being able to be people-centered and to focus on the people around me and see their progression and how they move and how their bodies come to you and how you're able to find spaces for them. That's what really focuses and brings me a lot of joy, specifically trauma-informed yoga. That is where I find it's my entry point, and it's also been like my point of being able to assess the body and be able to create environments for them to feel that sense of safety that maybe they haven't felt in a while.
Yeah.
So that's what I do and what I do find pure joy in.
All with that marketing in the background, you know?
You need that 401k.
Well, I will say though that marketing takes quite a lot of creative thinking. And I think if you are not a creative person trying to do marketing, like it just doesn't go the same. I think there's just a base level that you kind of need.
It's all storytelling, where you are given the material for the story and you're able to ingest it and like have your references, have your facts, have your beautiful charts that are color coordinated and just really pretty. And then it's demolished when clients be like, this doesn't make sense. And you're like, fair, let me try to retrain, like phrase this whole thing so that it does like get what you're looking for, which storytelling is pretty hard, especially when there may not be a good intention behind how you want to frame it. Usually the people that get to tell stories are the victors, and they're not usually found in the most ethical ways.
Yeah. Well, today we're the victors and we're telling our own stories. So that's why we're doing this really at its core is I want people to be able to tell their own stories in their own way. So this is kind of the story of you, but also the story of a bigger community today. And we're going to be actually talking about queer studies, because I know that is a special interest of yours over the last year and a half or so. And but before we get to that, I just kind of want to get to the core of who you are and maybe how you perceive the world a little bit. So I wrote down here to mention mention that today is a little different because we're not talking about the marketing part of what you are. We're talking about like the core interests of, and that's fine. The core interests of what you like. And that is queer studies, as many other things are. But we're focusing on that today because you are, I would say, very interested in advocacy. And the way I know that is because after all those years of knowing you as a child, we split ways, did our own things. And when I found you on Instagram, you were actually doing something called Trashion Fashion.
Oh, yeah.
And you were using recycled materials and literal trash to make beautiful art in the form of dresses. I'll put pictures like between us here. Oh, beautiful, look at that. Oh, beautiful. And it really was like, I mean, this is like prime 2000, like what, 12 or 15, something like that.
The straw movement was hitting really hard. They're like, think of the turtles.
Yeah, and we were thinking of the turtles.
They were everywhere on everyone's Facebook page, their Instagram. There was no way to escape something like that.
And you found another purpose for it. So could you tell us what materials you used and why you were interested in Trashion Fashion to begin with?
Yes, I've been within the Trashion Fashion realm ever since I was, like, I want to say like a teenager. Amy Murley, fabulous woman, was probably the creator of what I would consider like the Connecticut, specifically the Hartford area Trashion Fashion. Extended invite to like anyone wants to experience, design, model. I'm creating the environment, come and do it. And I did that for a couple of years, but I never actually like resonated to the point that I'm like, I'm going to create a series about this and be able to create something a little bit more bigger and focused in like trying to create a conversation rather than just something that can be worn and developed, which is, I think, the original point of the Trashion Fashion within Connecticut that Amy Murley created. It just took a while for it to like actually like embed in myself. And it started with me creating these designs and being like, I just want to be able to wear them longer than one day.
Right.
Which, because it takes a lot of work to go into something like that. Gosh, it's not, because this is not fabric where it has some tension to it. It will hold if you just sew it. This is trash that if it has heat, it will melt. If it has sort of like a plastic texture, if you pull it too hard, it will still fall apart. So it's much more of a delicate process, which created more of a like couture kind of aspect of it, because this is more like, this is like 200 hours per item, which
there
was a time in my life where I was privileged enough to have that. It was great. But because I've had that like sort of change in perspective, I had that time and the connections to be able to start creating these sort of designs, and the more embedded movement of like, let's think long term here. What's going to happen in 5 years with this plastic cup that I'm going to hold? What about this straw? And it sort of created the mindset of what is going to happen in 10 years, 5 years, 50 years, like going all the way up to 100 years. And some of these things are not going to decompose for hundreds, some of them thousands of years. So having that mindset and just sort of, and that time frame to actually be able to dedicate some energy to a more of an in-depth conversation, I was able to create these designs. And I didn't really understand like the amount of networking I had until I started reaching out to people being like, hey, if you have trash, I'm like, specifically, I was asking for white trash bags. You get them at like any grocery store. This was like before like the single plastic ban that like a lot of these states are implementing. Like in Massachusetts, it's going to cost you like 10, 15 cents if you want to do that. Always go paper. It's like, it's free. But that was a time where that wasn't the case. So everyone just had these bunches of trash bags. And I was trying to be like, I'm not here to go to grocery stores and just buy a lot of stuff. I would rather be able to ask the people around me to, one, get data to see where all these trash bags are coming from. How much am I able to get by just asking people? And like, that tells me how much they might already have in stock, because some people keep them just to have around. Oh yeah. Like that's the thing.
Oh, everybody. I mean, my sink all growing up underneath, like that's where you would stuff it, right? That's the spot, everybody.
You never know when you need a trash bag until you need the trash bag.
Exactly.
And I'm here like, can I have your trash bag?
Yeah, right. You're like, this is the need. Yes.
So I sent out videos and I would just be asking people, and I post them on my Instagram or my Facebook, asking like, hey, send it to this address, like a PO kind of thing. Like, don't really like people know exactly where I was living at that time. And I got national and international people reaching out to being like, hey, I'd love to send you X, Y, and Z. So we're talking like Hawaii, there was some in London. Like it was really spread out. And so me being able to realize like, wow, if I ask, it's probably going to be given, which is fantastic. So I was able to create one specific design. It was the white, like wedding dress, plastic bags. That one took like 250 hours.
Yeah.
It was a lot of like hand work, a lot of repetition because you had to prep the material before you could even sew the material. But it created such a beautiful design. And that's where I started to realize like if you make it like approachable or like something that feels connected to other people, because everyone wears clothes predominantly. We can all resonate with fashion in our own individualistic ways because that's how you express yourself, whether it's like what you choose to wear when you want to be comfortable, whether it's something that you want to be more formal in. Fashion is something that everyone will first notice about the people around them. So that was my platform of being able to show people like, hey, look at this beautiful dress. Wow, it's so shiny. Wow, it has movement to it. But if you look closer, and if you actually really look at it, you start to find out that these are materials that are basically thrown away like nothing.
Yeah.
Like they have no value.
Right.
So I was taking something that had no value and actually giving it something that had more meaning and having other people validate that by having interest in something in that. And that creates the conversation of, hey, do you want to know how I got this? Hey, should I be able to have accumulated over 700 trash bags within like 2 weeks? Like, is that something that should be happening? And that makes people look at the cost and effect of everyday use for something that we purely don't think about that is not going to decompose anytime soon.
Yeah. Well, I will say being the person that was in the room building these things with you, but knowing how much detail goes into something like that, because I need to let you know, I am a huge fan of Project Runway.
Oh my God.
So I know exactly what it's like behind the scenes, especially with like a strict time limit.
Yeah.
But something that sticks out to me as one of the garments you made was, I believe it was a dress. And it was made of all CDs.
Oh my God, yeah.
And that, I mean, as we know, at that time, everybody kind of was still keeping on to their CDs, but like didn't really use them per se, because Bluetooth was becoming more of a thing and DVD players were kind of going away. Yeah. But what I love about that, and actually like the way I'll connect it, is that, like you said, it by itself had no value, but you started putting it together. The reflectiveness of this was so catchy. You paired it with like a very dark, like almost purple blue, which I loved. And it was just so striking, and it seemed rich, like in all forms of the sense of the word. And I don't know, it was just kind of like, you know, something on its own is very easily neglected, but you combined it into a collective that people couldn't ignore anymore.
That was the first one that made people really stop. And that it wasn't even a part of the series. It was my first, like, I'm tired of making something that doesn't last more than a year, because I love participating in these fashion shows. So I want to make something that has a zipper. I want to make something that has like a foundation of cloth so that I can actually add on or take away based on whatever trash material I need to be using. And at that point, like, I had a bunch of CDs, a lot of like similarly, like, don't know if it's going to be obsolete or not, but here it is. And I was able to create a design that basically looked like a walking disco ball.
And it was fucking awesome.
When I modeled, because I would also, like, I want to wear them too. I put CDs all over my face. Like, I did huge eye makeup. My hair was so tall. Like, it was a whole disco fiasco. For sure. But it was the entry
that's the
point.
type of fiasco I want to be a part of. Let me tell you.
I know. I was lucky that a lot of people wanted to, because that's how I found my models.
That's amazing.
It worked out really nicely because other people wanted to wear it too. And that was how I realized I could make it bigger, by going into fashion shows, by going into art exhibits, because it was so applicable to many different forms of communication. Yeah. And that's just how it went.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite parts about anybody's brain, really, and something I love about my brain, is being able to see something as that a lot of people, again, pass by on the street, they're not looking at, or they would say that has no value, and then we find it and we make something out of it instead. We find the meaning, and I really think there is meaning in pretty much everything. So
that's why we're here.
Yeah, exactly. So moving on to the main thing we're talking about today, which is queer studies. LGBTQIA+ world, there's so much to learn. So I was wondering, could you bring me back first to a memory of observing a queer relationship and how it affected you at a young age?
Yeah, I grew up in an environment where there was a strict expectation of what a good life looks like, and it was specifically within the normative gender dynamics where you have a male and a female, and that's romance, that's family, that's love, and that's the slice of the cake that I was exposed to and had a deep understanding of like, this is what my life is going to look like. But I remember very distinctly, because it stuck out so strongly in my mind, when I was actually in Massachusetts and it was the 4th of July. My family goes there so many times, and during my adolescence, I'd say we'd go there every year for 4th of July, which was crazy because it's right on the Esplanade, right by the fireworks, but everybody also wants to be there, so you had to get there at like 7 a.m. to find your spot. Right. And you're there until 10 p.m. when the fireworks go off. So there'd be a lot of, we're gonna be here a while, get your book, get your snacks, and get comfortable, because like you need to have a good spot for this. Yeah. So we did that constantly, and I don't know if it was the first time or the 5th time or the 7th time, but I remember walking along the Esplanade with my siblings, because it was like 1 p.m. We still had a couple hours to go before the actual show. But I distinctly remember walking, and there's this maze of people around us. It's getting compact. And just looking at the corner of my eye, I see 2 individuals of the same gender embracing each other just very lovingly, in the same way that I would see like my parents do that. And so for me, it wasn't strict like, oh, they're just friends. No, this was like, wow, this looks like they like are, there's a deep connection there, so intimate that I've only really seen in couples, and specifically like my parents. Like they would always be holding each other's hands, embracing each other. They were never really like physically far apart from each other. Yeah. So I remember seeing that. I mean, like I can't click that into like that's a friendship kind of thing. That is the way that they are embracing, is I understand that is a deep connection. That's deeper than what I would see portrayed as like in the media. Like they're just gal pals. They're just friends. Like they're roommates.
They were roommates.
Yeah. They were roommates. Like
that moved in right away. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just like, I don't think so. And I remember seeing that and at first being very shocked, because I was like, wow, I'm not quite sure how to compute this, because that was never something ever really talked about in my family or in like any of my dynamics, especially not in my religion growing up. Like that was very much like, we do not like really even acknowledge that there is another way of life, or there's another way of being.
So at that point of time, did you know that was even a choice?
No.
Okay. Yeah,
I would not say so. I never really thought it was a choice or something that I could make for myself. I knew it was something like other people could make, and I was like, it's not my business.
Yeah,
like,
right.
They have no impact on my life, so what does it matter? But I never really viewed it as a choice for me until like relatively recently. And giving myself that permission was probably one of the bigger steps in like having other people validate for me, and realizing that's not something that you're really going to get in certain dynamics. So having to do that yourself is also like pretty challenging, because that requires you to let go of your validation from other people, specifically like really deep people in your life, to be able to make that transition. And seeing that couple as a child like instantly told me like, that's good for other people, but that's not something that I can always like maybe experience, and not have a little side of like judgment.
Right. So, I mean, this is kind of like a first exposure moment. I think you wrote that you were around 12 years old.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's an age too where you're starting to think about relationships a little bit more, and you're maybe even asking your parents about it. So that must have been very effective, in your brain, because
in
it sticks out.
It sticks there, but I'm never going to talk about it to anybody. Very much so. And it was like stored very heavily, but I never really wanted to forget it, because it was so striking and it was so different from what I've experienced or what I've been told to expect for any kind of relationships.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Well, we'll get back to that, I'm sure. But
not too far.
To continue on, because this doesn't sound like it might apply, but it really does. For those who don't know, what is misogyny, and how is it a part of the queer studies that you've been looking into?
I think a lot of people can connect with experiencing misogyny, and I think the best people to talk about this are the ones that experience it the most, and that's specifically women. Whether it's biological, trans, like there is an experience And to give a good explanation of misogyny, it's usually a prejudice or a deep-seated hatred towards women and having very strict expectations of what they can and cannot do. So there's a sense of control that comes from something of having this kind of belief. And how that transfers into trans misogyny is we still have the foundation of believing that there's a specific place for women. When it comes to trans misogyny, it focuses on trans femininity. So those are people who are in transition to identify as a female. So they are presenting more feminine in this situation. So there's a transphobia on top of misogyny. So it makes this awful sandwich. And
awful sandwich. Yes, that's the way to say it. Yeah.
It's like, or we should say like awful grinder if we're keeping like with Connecticut.
Right.
That's very much the slang. But that is at the base. It is a sexualization of the femininity, but it is also paired with a oppressive aggression towards these people because they are not always perceived as female, even though they might be presenting as such. So there's an association of like, but you're still a man and you are sexually driven to have these tendencies. So you are also an aggressor as well as a sexualized feminine person. So there's a lot to unpack within that perspective.
Damn, yeah.
And they build on each other very strongly. So we'll find that as we go through this, there's a lot of externalization. There's a lot of fear that comes from it. And there's a lot of internal feelings of the aggressor that is also blessing them as the victim at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is, it makes it really difficult, especially in cases where there are assaults, there's murder. So you might have heard the term gay panic or queer panic.
Yes.
I've seen in media where it's kind of reframed and reused as individuals realizing their sexuality. So it's often can be like a good thing that they're phrasing it as like, oh, I realized like, oh, I might be sexually attracted to a different gender or the same gender. Oh, wow, my gay panic is sitting in. So I've heard that. And I will not lie, it does make my spine crawl a little bit because the whole basis or the rhetoric of gay panic, specifically in this case, I want to focus on trans panic.
Yeah.
That is actually a legal process or a tactic used to excuse the attacker from assaulting or even murdering a trans person.
Yeah, which is awful.
They use it in the phrase that the aggressor, when they found out that the victim was trans, they would fly into a rage of confusion and hurt that person. So they cannot be held liable for their actions because they were just confused.
Right.
And unfortunately, that is a really effective tactic in the courts. And because there is a lot of trans misogyny, not just within male communities, but there's also like within the feminine community, there is heavy. Which is
because if you want to keep that secure, right, and familiar to yourself, if someone does not fit into the binary of what maybe a woman you think is or looks like or should be or present like, it's challenging that idea of what feminine is.
The scary part is that individuals who, I'll use the word pass, they're passing as true femininity where there isn't any clear indicators that they might be transitioning. Those individuals are actually the ones at more risk because the shock is more intense that they are not biologically female, that they actually could be murdered. There's actually several instances, especially within the United States military, where there have been cases in the Philippines, for example, where a trans female was actually murdered by an individual from the U.S. military, U.S. Navy, I should say, and the U.S. did step in pretty strongly to protect that individual, refusing to get them over to the Philippines government. So there's a lot of protection, unfortunately, to the aggressors, that they are seen as victims when who is really killing who here.
Yeah.
There has to be a lot of unpacking, and that definitely starts with the internalization of misogyny towards women and seeing how that transitions also within the trans community, unfortunately.
More clear.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, very nice. Okay, so that's devastating. Here, wait, let me.
That is so unfortunate.
So depression, yeah. Depression sets in. Okay, so we are back. I wanted to know, what does it mean to live in a binary system, and who historically in the past or present lives outside of this system?
Wow. So
just real quick. I'm kidding. So anyways, again, what does it mean to live in a binary system, and who historically in the past has lived outside of this?
There have been many people that have lived outside of the binary expectation or the gender binary, and many cultures, specifically cultures that were previously colonized by the French, Spain, specifically British, it's all of these specific, and even the States. They have a lot of these nations and cultures that have been colonized originally did have individuals that didn't fall within the binary. And usually what we've seen happen is within these communities that these people don't fall within the binary, the colonizational power will step in to create a narrative that they don't belong. So in India, and I'm going to butcher their name, so I have to look this up because trying to be as historically accurate as we can. There's so much, guys. Hijras, and I'm sure I pronounced that incorrectly, but here's how it's done. Specifically within India, these were individuals that were actually considered to be sacred. These were individuals that were seen as healers. They were important in terms of marriage or just developing a household. These were people that didn't fall within the narrative of Christianity. When it came to there's an image of God, there is Adam, there is Eve, there is this expectation that there is the two here. But India doesn't have Christianity, and a lot of the places that were colonized did not have Christianity. So there was the perspective of, I'm bringing this way of thinking to others, but when we're finding things that don't click, then the narrative is shifted to this cannot be a part of this. So we're going to have state-sanctioned policing or registries to limit access for these people, to limit traveling for these people, because that's how a lot of people make money, is being able to travel to do their job, to be visible. So that brings in the narrative of the oppressor in the situation to other those individuals. Because there is no English word for what a Hijras is, because I wouldn't call them transsexual or I wouldn't call them transgendered, because that's a term that's really recent, whereas this community,
interesting, yeah,
years, hundreds of years before we even have the term ourselves. So, and I wouldn't even say that they're equal. And I think because even at that time of colonization, there still was not a word for something like this. It was trying to fit within a gender binary when it was actually something completely different. So instead of trying to understand there is more to this, there is no, control comes from within, rather than trying to understand something different. Yeah. So that othering that happens really tries to erase anything outside of the binary, where a lot of power comes from the power of two. And I think of Star Wars, the power of two. There's a structure in place to support that, where certain genders are in power, and there's an expectation and there's a freedom from that, whereas others have to support and provide so that there can be that kind of structure.
Yeah. And the way I would look at it too is okay, let's say you and I lived on an island. And the way we looked at the binary is we drew a line in that sand, and we said everybody that is our definition of like a male is on this side of the island, and everybody that's our definition of female is on this side of the island.
Yeah.
And what it sounds like is that people in India, for example, they're standing directly in between that line, and they are comfortable and they stand on their own in a world in between. Or even like literally in the ocean, like they're not even focused on the line. Yeah. The line does not matter to them. It is not a force of there's a space their specifically identity for them. Yeah. So, and they are comfortable having their own space that they make, and they're accepted. And everybody is living in peace. Everything's fine. Yeah. You are just who you are. And then the colonizer comes in and says, hey, you know what? I want to have control of these people that I don't like. And I don't understand. And it makes me uncomfortable because I like the line. Because how do you explain something you don't know? Good. Exactly. It's like trying to present on like rocks. Like, don't know anything about it. So we're just not going to talk about it. Well, it kind of reminds me too of like the fact that just because you've never seen it does not mean it does not exist. And that is something that I literally learned about these people like a couple years ago. And I was like, I just didn't, I didn't even know. No. So to hear that isn't something new is actually kind of like relieving, because it's like, oh, like there's so much scarcity mindset and like fear around like, this is different, this is new, this is dangerous, we don't know what this will result in. And it's like, we actually do. And people have been living in peace with it for centuries. Yeah. There's been a level of acceptance, and it's embedded so much that the binary is so out of the norm for other people. Yeah. And it's crazy to have that like flip of being like, there's more to this cake. It's not this one slice. Your culture is not the only one in existence. And it can be hard, because then that questions your power. That questions your structure of like, if other people are able to exist without my power structure, what does that mean for me? Right. Yeah. What power do I have now? And my question to you would be, why is it so important for you to have the ultimate power over everybody else? Let's think about that. Anyways, think about that for yourself. Okay, we're not going to talk about that one for you. But I was wondering if you could tell me what a foreign imposed narrative and where we see that being used. Oh, yeah. So going back to the example of the Hijras, there is the imposing of the narrative, where these individuals who were central to this culture, to this socialization, and these individuals, they are then, as the colonial power comes in, the narrative is shifted of like, these are not holy people, these are sexual prostitutes. That's what they are. And like, we need to put them on a registry. They're dangerous. They cannot be just able to leave their town, and leaving the town, that's how you go to work. Sexual prostitution from a healer, from a spiritual guide. That is a very big shift in the narrative. And that also changes how people view you. And it tells you how people in power are viewing you. And I can only think of the equivalent in like similar situations of where we're changing the narrative when it comes to transgenders, where a lot of the accusations come from a pedophilia. I might have butchered that word a little bit. Pedophilia. Yes, but that is, and unfortunately, a lot of that inflammation of rhetorics coming in tends to come from the people in power, where they can externalize their own blame in some ways. When I think of like the church, specifically the Catholic Church, where they have had a numerous amount of cases come forward where there has been abuse of power, specifically by the priests, and the protection of the church in that case. Yeah. So, by the way, men abusing other men in most cases. Yes. So it doesn't just hurt women, it hurts everyone. And who does that benefit? Who's really happy here? A very select few. A very select few. And are they really happy? I think if we got them into a room,
I think if we got them into a room, I think we would find out that they are actually really disconnected from society and they find no joy. So that is why they have to go to such extreme cases to feel something.
Yeah. Another thinker.
You know what? I have these things. I have some theories.
Rose, you and I, if nothing else, we got thoughts, you know?
We're not afraid to say them.
Yeah. Okay, so as we can see, I literally wrote here, well, queer studies is not without hardship. Hello, ding, ding, ding.
No, it's not.
But I was wondering if we could talk about like a specific time of history in queer studies. So I would love if you could tell us what Stonewall was.
Oh, yeah.
What STAR is, S.T.A.R, and how these two are related.
So a lot of individuals, including myself until I actually started to do more research into this, assumed that, the gay liberation movement, I believe is what it was called at the time, started in Stonewall, which is 1969, I believe, in New York. Stonewall is actually not an actual Stonewall, which is what I thought when I first heard about it years ago. But it is actually like a bar, like a gathering point specifically for minorities and specifically people within the LGBTQ plus IA community. So it's an actual place. But in 1969, there was a riot that was as a result of a police raid that apparently happened pretty consistently, but it got to a point where there was a physical altercation, and a lot of what these street queens, which are very different from drag queens. Drag queens are performers. Yep. Specifically, they go on stage and they generally portray femininity in like the most outrageous, glamorous way possible. If you've ever been to a drag show, my Lord, it's like going to church. Yeah. It is a very level of like the commitment, the performance, the dedication. It's a fully immersive experience. When it comes to a street queen, that specifically is a transgendered identifying female.
Right.
Again,
it's not just on stage, it's their life on the street.
It is the life. This is their life. And this is like how they choose to be portrayed in the world, regardless of how that makes them targets. They are basically, there's a lot of predators because of this. And unfortunately, if they experience violence, it's very rare that they will actually ever experience justice for it, because there's a sentimentality of like they deserved it because they are living outside the norm. But there's also fear of like, but I sexualize this, but I want this. So that's where the confusion of like transphobia, misogyny, like sneaks right in together.
Yep.
Sorry, I forgot what the original question was.
That's okay. I was wondering if you could tell us also about what STAR is and how it's kind of connected to Stonewall, or more about Stonewall as well. So Stonewall was a bar. There was an altercation. The cops were coming by. So what happened that night specifically, and why is Stonewall like such a topic of discussion?
Yes, Stonewall is constantly referenced as the start of the gay liberation movement, because that is honestly, like, there were several more before that. They're just not talked about nearly as much. There was one, I believe, in California a couple months before Stonewall happened. But because it was so vocalized and it was so reported on, that became like the original gay liberation movement, when in actuality there had been such an underground surface community.
Yeah, so it was kind of like a boiling over point.
Very much so. And it was, a lot of people have validated the stance that it was started with the street queens. Because unfortunately, even within the community, the LGBTQIA plus community, they are considered less than
the trans people.
Yes. So, and these are individuals that are basically forced to go into sex work, because that is how they are able to make money while still staying true to their personality, to their identity of femininity. So because of that, these are individuals that truly have nothing to lose, because everything has been taken away. And when you are left with nothing, what do? You act, because they literally cannot take more away from you. Yeah. So it was led specifically by Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson. So these, again, they did not identify as transgender. That's a very recent term, within like the past 10 years.
Okay, wow.
So they identified specifically as trans women of color and street queens, and they were at the center of this riot. But what was very interesting is that after this riot, there was another protest happening where these street queens were actually abandoned by other members of the LGBTQ plus community when police were actually starting to arrest people. And because of that abandonment and because they were being written out of the narrative of being a part of this riot, the start of the rebellion, if you will, they actually went to go form their own liberation movement, and it started with STAR. And that stands for the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. So it was actually a location where they would have a home for people, where they could go, they would have food, they would have resources, which unfortunately, I think it was 8-9 months later, they were actually forced to be evicted because of that. But another crazy thing, because they being, I believe it was Sylvia, she was actually supposed to speak at, I think it was the second commencement speech of Stonewall, but she was actually physically barred from giving a speech by individuals who wanted to keep the liberation movement as gender normative as possible, because they believed that was the only way they would be accepted within the overall community, which they're not wrong. That actually did happen. So there was an abandonment within the community in order to validate at what cost are we talking here. So there's been more conversations recently, especially with a lot of policies coming through, that there is a wish to fix that there is a reconnection, I want to say, or more validation within the community that this is something that is part of the lovely umbrella.
Of the whole pie. Not keeping out any pieces.
Exactly. And it is a failure within the LGBTQ community, very much so. And it's not just within that community, but it's also within feminists have very much abandoned, I would say, their trans feminine counterparts here.
Yeah. Well, something that I find interesting about STAR specifically is when we're talking about people that are street queens and are going into sex work, this is not a one size fits all, right? It's not that everyone that is trans is a sex worker. No. That is not what we're saying. What we are trying to portray is that when you are ousted, not by only your church, your society, your family, most likely. That's why most people become homeless. And actually a large majority of people who are homeless tend to be part of the LGBTQIA community. And they tend to be teenagers, because when your family does not accept you, they don't want you in the house, likely.
What's going to happen?
You're not safe in the house that you were supposed to be safe in. And you're not safe outside. So, exactly. So what I love about STAR is immediately thinking about that. I'm like, oh my God, that's the church. That's the church, because the church is not a building. And also the building that's supposed to be filled with these people that love every human being that was created is now denying access to safety. So within that own community, they became church for each other. So I find it beautiful.
They became each other's homes and their houses. Right. If you watch any ballrooms, you'll find that there are houses within those. And that's generally how transgendered females or any specific individual within that community, that's how they were able to find their home, is to go under a home that was led by another person for safety. And that was their responsibility, is to make sure that they were fed, to make sure that they had a home over their head, they were able to have safety, became the responsibility of the house mothers, if you will, to do that, because no one else would.
Yeah. You mean angels? Is that what we're talking about? Whoa! Hey!
Yeah.
Put that on a sticker. Okay. Could you tell us about the book, Who is Afraid of Gender? Specifically, what has it taught you about how systems react to gender nonconforming societies specifically?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of touched on that. So if you want to go somewhere else with it too.
No, I think it's a similar narrative in that I think that's why it's just as a strong response. It looks at who's at power, who's in power at this point, and what are the narratives are they using to stay in power or to exclude other individuals from having access to safety, like the very bare minimum what we're talking here. Right. We're talking about safety, fundamental rights, everything that comes within like the Constitution, right. Basically. Yeah. And when it comes to who is deserving, it's a very specific individual and it's very specific genders. And unfortunately, there is the viewpoint of that if you do not fall within that, you are then othered, just like we talked about, and you are seen as pushing an agenda, if you will. So there was a statement made by Pope Francis, where I will say that he specifically was celebrated quite heavily for his acceptance of the LGBTQ community, which a lot of people in power at that time were not doing it specifically in the church. Like it was very much, that's not something that, like God has an image and it was specifically within two faces, and that is male and that is female, that is Adam, that is Eve, and that has been the case consistently. So there's this very strong narrative. There is a book that supports this narrative that's being referenced constantly. And when you have this foundation, when you have this understanding, and you see it, not everyone follows that. Not everyone believes what you understand to be the foundation of truth that your identity is in. It can create very strong reactions, as we've seen with trans misogyny. There are cases where the attackers are victimized, when in reality, they are the ones that are perpetrating violence and systemic situations where that happens. Specifically, Pope Francis was comparing the study of gender theory. So that was looking at how society constructs and defines gender, whether it's in the binary or extended, going into like a twin spirits, for example. But he compared the study to Herodes, and I'm sure I'm saying that very wrong. Basically betraying Jesus. So this is more of an insult, honestly. Yeah. So he's comparing that to people who do not fully invest themselves in what the Bible is telling them to be true. And he's saying that within every generation, there is always going to be this. And it's the people that study this specifically. And there was a comparison that by placing gender theory within any curriculum, in general, that's like oppressive nature. You're pushing your ideals onto other people when there are cases where you have to say the Lord's Prayer before you eat, before you have lessons. So there has to be a level of, well, let's decompose this a little bit, but he called it like ideological colonization. Of like, this is being oppressed and pushed on us, and you're only going to believe if this is included in your studies. So, and he likened that to an indoctrination similar to the Hitler Youth Group, basically. So it's a very strong intersection of what be perceived as progressive legislation. Progressive education is being flipped on its narrative, being like, that's not progressive. You're actually trying to push something onto other people, and you're actually evil for doing something like that. Right.
And that's really sad to hear that in the news to this day, like present day. We could probably Google something. I'll put something up that's from this year. So we hear this narrative that like these people are dangerous. Working outside of the system is bad. Like people are harmed by this, right?
Yes.
They bring in children a lot. Like, we don't want to harm the children. We don't want them to see this other world. We don't want them to be exposed to danger. Meanwhile, it is trans people that are falling basically at the hands of people that perpetuate that. Those others are evil, really, in a sense, when it's like they're not dying from this. You know, it is an uncomfortability that we're asking them to sit with. And I know that is hard. But what's really harder is to see innocent, lovely people being killed for just wanting to be themselves.
Yeah, very much so. It's very, and it has to make you kind of wonder, like, who's really the attacker here?
Yeah.
Like, who is physically and like politically trying to take away rights of the people?
Yeah. So I was wondering, what does inclusion require and entail?
So inclusion can look like a lot of things for a lot of different people. And I think what makes it effective inclusion has to come in many different forms. So when you think of individuals who have disabilities, whether it's physical or cognitive, there has to be a way to provide access. So I remember there was one specific person, I think his name was Adam Kuhner, was creating a photographic series about self-portraits. And this is an individual who is physically impaired, and he was basically going around different areas of his town and taking pictures. These are self-portraits, and these are situations where he's like, this is a picture of me in front of a gallery that I cannot get into because it is a step entrance.
Right.
So that is an example of preventative inclusion, basically. Like, you physically are not able to get into this space because it was designed for able bodies. So there's a level of like physicality of cobblestones. Boston has so many cobblestones. It is notoriously not an environment that is inclusive. There are chairs in the stadium where I would go and watch baseball games, and realizing like, wow, these chairs have not been redesigned. These things are very narrow. Like, there's a level of like, this is how it was and this is how it's going to be. So there's a preventative of even having a conversation to look at inclusion in that way. COVID, trigger warning, was a very great example of like redefining what inclusion looks like, because there was a mandate that you cannot be within X amount of feet of somebody, whether it was acknowledged or not. But because of that, a lot of people started to experience isolation. They started to experience a lot of fear and anxiety from something like this. So there was a level of disconnect that was universal. Very few people that were unaffected by it, and especially those people on the front lines that were able to be within that parameter, often suffered from it. So I don't know about you, but I experienced a lot of situations where companies would be like, we're going to have Zoom game nights, or I'd be Zooming with my friends and families. So there would be a level of like inclusion that comes from that. And there's an importance that we've all experienced something like that, how horrendous it was. But that also was an opportunity for individuals who still to this day are not able to fully participate in something like that, and still being able to join via Teams or via Zoom to still have that connection without having to physically be there and experience inclusion from that specific example.
So inclusion really sounds like access, equal access. And that to me is beautiful. But yeah, I think you're so right. I think anyone who experienced COVID can sit and say, hey, that sucked that I could not go to my church. I could not go to see my family. I couldn't see my grandma, who was like, maybe passing in a hospital, which was very much a situation. If you saw someone, they had to be like your pod, but there were so many things too that were like maybe fashion shows, maybe like a trip you really wanted to go on. All of a sudden it was non-existent. It was not available.
Never even a choice.
It's never even a choice. And we also were in this kind of limbo for a while where like at first was like, hey, 2 weeks and then you'll get it back.
Oh my God.
And then it kept on getting pushed further and further.
2 years later.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden we were in this like weird zeitgeist of like, I don't know when or if the thing I was allowed to do before or willing to do or wanted to do after will even be an option. So I think we can all actually relate to what that feels like to have access taken away and how harmful it is to our psyche. So imagine growing up and living in a society that whether COVID is happening or not, that is their experience.
That is your daily life.
That is your daily life.
Every day.
Yeah, exactly. So it takes a little empathy and compassion to think about that.
And it makes you have to stop and think like, who is here, who is not here, and why are they not here?
Yeah.
Doing so great.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to clap once more. Here we go.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. My feet are strong. Okay, so could you tell? Oh wait, no, we got that question right. Let's move on.
So
we talked
fast.
about inclusion. We're getting to the last page here.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my god, yeah, we're kind
so
of at the
fast.
end.
I'm so good at this.
Wait, high five. Yeah, go us. So could you tell me what have you learned through all these books that you've read? I'll put a list somewhere, probably below, of everything that you can read. I love how detailed you were in the answers you gave me. There's plenty of links we will add to this as well. But I was wondering, what have you learned about our surroundings and upbringings and how they shape us specifically?
Yes. Where you live, your financial well-being, and the people that you are surrounded with heavily dictate your views of the world. And that's something I learned very strongly when I started to go to college, when I had a car, when I actually had mobility. Because the area that I grew up in, if you wanted to go anywhere, if you wanted to go to a grocery shopping, it was 5 minutes down the road, but it'd be a 45-minute walk. So having the access and the privilege to go to college, to have this mobility, starts expanding your world, because you start to interact with people that are from completely different societies, completely different cultures. Then you start to realize, like, wow, the upbringing that I was exposed to, that was my tried and true. I know it. I understand it. I understand the expectations that come with something like this. And maybe I'm okay with it, or maybe I'm not okay with it, or maybe I'm just kind of just being because I want to be agreeable, for example.
Yeah.
Once you start to experience people that also have experienced different things and have gone through different experiences, and being able to connect with them, you start to realize there's other ways of being, there's other ways of living, there's other ways of understanding and even teaching. There's other ways to ingest information and for it to be digestible. And I think there's a level of fear that comes from, what if I don't understand it? And if I don't understand it, and if it's different, then it must be wrong.
Yeah.
That kind of is a signal that maybe it's the narrative that might have been given to us in our adolescence and growing up and going forward from there is so strongly embedded and so strongly reinforcing that having any other viewpoint is instantly perceived as a threat. When you have that level of insecurity and just fear of something different, it can make any slight deviation of the narrative horribly experienced.
Yeah.
So I think I was very lucky in that where I live has very good colleges. It has very good access to education. I was lucky that I was encouraged to be curious, to think about things differently. I come from a very heavily academic family where there's always books. There's always like opportunities for learning. I was lucky in that my mother is a very good advocator in the sense that, or specifically a sponsor, in the sense that if she was not able to teach something, she would be very effective at finding those opportunities. So for me, an example, the way that she was a great advocator and sponsor for me was like creativity. Rose needs to go to museums. We need to find Rose physical activities. Let's put her in gymnastics. Maybe she needs art teacher. Let's go find her like a private person to teach her and go continuously. So there were opportunities, and I'm privileged to have individuals as my parents that look at the situation and be like, we should encourage them to go experience other people's churches. Let's encourage them to experience other physical activities and to be competitive in it, or to just do it just to do it, see how it goes.
Yeah.
And from that foundation, it created a good jumping off point of being able to hear other people and be curious. I think that is probably the one thing that is so important when it comes to just sitting down and hearing other people's perspective, their experience, their religion, their beliefs, what keeps them up at night, what woos them to sleep. It's important to have that curiosity, because without that, I think that makes our world a little more dull.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, ask anyone that has traveled outside of their state or their country.
Their town.
You are going to experience a different culture.
Yeah.
But what is so beautiful for me about a cell phone, and the best part of the cell phone is if you do not have access, which we are not going to pretend that everybody has the financial well-being to even.
Those things are expensive.
Oh my
Even if you get them
gosh, yeah.
secondhand.
And like a lot of people are working literally 2+ jobs to even make it by,
Just
and
to
all they have
survive.
time for is to go home and regroup for that next job.
Even if they can, unless they're taking care of people. Like caregivers, to the caregivers.
Hey,
to the caregivers.
We love it, to the caregivers.
They're never off work.
Yeah, exactly. But what I loved is that as someone who has had a lot of really hardworking jobs, I didn't have access to all these different communities or towns or even events within my town.
Yeah.
I was able to find and talk to people like you, and also just experience other people's lives by looking. But I had to be curious to look, right? Because your algorithm can kind of. Oh, thank you.
Brave. I think that's not something that's like validated enough, because so there has to be a curiosity, but there has to be a willingness being like, I want to learn. That also requires exposure. That requires to be okay with raising your hand, being like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Can you explain it to me? And if you can explain it, you are a great teacher. You are a great teacher,
so cool.
Because that means you know it.
Yeah.
And that also means that, hey, maybe you really want to share it. Sharing is caring.
Sharing is caring.
Sharing is caring.
Get it through it. I was wondering too, before we kind of end this out, speaking of exposure and like having a worldview and expanding that, I know that you have gone to plenty of events since that 12-year-old self saw that queer couple for the first time, coming to close to present day.
Yeah.
You have been to queer events and LGBTQ parades and things like that. Can you tell me what it was like going with a certain friend that you had and how it was different for even having the same experience together?
Oh, yeah. I was volunteering for specific like queer LGBTQ plus events long before I even realized I identified with it. Partly because I had friends, I had loved ones that like resonated and like connected with it. And I was like, I think a lot of people should do this, but this also requires to have time and energy. So I acknowledge that everyone has that. But I think the best way to experience parades is to volunteer.
Because that's cool.
You're not surrounded by a bunch of people that are trying to push and shove. You're actually like in the parade, so you can like experience the parade. So that's part of the like 50% of the reason that I decided I wanted to volunteer like the night before this parade, specifically in New York in 2019, pre-COVID. Because I was like, I want to see this, but I really don't want to be pushed and shoved. And like, I know it's going to be really overstimulating, because what is more glamorous than a pride event? I cannot tell you what would be more glamorous, more sparkly. Truly, there was confetti everywhere. So I volunteered, and I specifically wanted to be a sign holder because it would offer me a little bit of shade. So I volunteered to be a sign holder, and the sign was like, go this way to the end of the parade. It was purely just for individuals in the parade to know where to go after the parade. And with that, I had this specific sign up, and I had a partner with me that was also going to be like, we're on either side, so people can just pass through us. Met them that same day. They were lovely. They did identify with the community, and they were different ethnicity of me. So this was just like a whole transparency of different individuals connecting and believing in the same thing. So we had to get into the parade in order to do our job. We got our signs. We started walking towards the gate, that like little entry. So I popped it open and I walked right in to get to our specific designated area. And the person, my partner, behind me started to like walk through, and they were instantly stopped by a police officer telling them like, no, they cannot go this way. From what I could hear, as I realized that they weren't behind me, were explaining like, no, I'm a part of the parade. I have a pretty sign, like I'm a part of this. But they were rebuked a second time, being like, no, you cannot enter this way, even if you are a part of the parade. So in that situation, I wasn't really processing like the dynamics of the situation with a authoritative figure that is often a representation of violence against the community, standing out very aggressively, telling a member of the community that they cannot do something, and what the dynamic of that really meant. So that did not go through my mind whatsoever. But it was the sense of like, they're supposed to be here. I went through here, everyone's fine, like they can come too. So I started to approach the situation being like, hey, just so you know, we got our pretty signs, we're supposed to be stationed right there. And then instantly the police officer started to back off, like, okay, get through. And afterwards, like I could see they were visibly shaken up, understandably so. This is not a figure of safety, unfortunately. So to have that kind of experience in that environment and specifically for the event, is very jarring because that kind of reminds you of like, you can celebrate something, but that doesn't mean that everyone's going to celebrate with you or keep you safe within that environment.
Yeah.
So it was a very harsh experience. But I will say I have volunteered for the Boston Pride and have not experienced anything like that.
Hell yeah. All right. And can you tell me, what is it like going to a Pride parade?
Oh my gosh.
What are the vibes?
Glitter.
Ah!
Everywhere. There's just a level of joy that I haven't quite experienced in other areas that can quite easily compare. But I have a beautiful photo, and if I can share it, I'll like put it right here because it's just so much jubilee, I have to say, because it's something that, and I don't think a lot of people fully understand that to be queer is not new. This has been going on for generations, even outside the United States. Like, and to have visibility, I think that's what makes it so more special.
Yeah.
Is that there's a celebration of something like this. And even in other countries, that's not always the case. Taiwan is currently the only nation in Asia that has a pride parade. I believe it was Thailand that also just affirms same-sex marriage, but I might have to like triple check it. That
I'll put it up there. It's fine. We'll find it. Yeah.
But it's new visibility. I think that's why it makes it so rich and so exciting for a lot of people, because not a lot of people always think it's a choice. I didn't think it was a choice for a very long time. I had many people telling me straight to my face it was not a choice. As soon as I turned 18, people would be like, so when are you getting a husband? Like, so what's going on? 16, they're saying don't date, don't do it. Like, they're gross, don't do it. But if they're being mean to you, that means they like you, which is such a horrible narrative to be pushing. But as soon as I turned 18, they're like, where's your boyfriend? Where's your husband? Which is awful. Because I guarantee
very intrusive. Like, we don't know you like that.
It's the higher powers are very willing to share their view of what you should do with your body and what you should do with your life.
Yeah, the perception and expectation are
the peas.
Huge.
The peas.
Yeah, those peas.
Gotta watch it.
Oh gosh, yeah. Hey, you know, not everybody can have that jubilee. Am I right?
No,
yeah, and it's so sad.
It's so foreign. And again, like, not everyone thinks it's an option.
Yeah.
Or even believes that other people should have that option.
Yeah. And you know what's so strange to me is seeing something where people are literally wearing the colors of a rainbow, which is just so vibrant in every way. And someone looks at that with disgust because they are watching someone else be free and happy and existing in peace. And I think any Christian that has gotten to this point and they might be like ready to send me a really strong email.
CC me, I'm very
curious. Yeah, I would love to know. Expect me to talk about it publicly as well if that happens. But if you feel very strongly that we are full of shit, let's say, and you are right, you know, if that's the world you want to live in, that's okay. But you cannot impose your worldview on other people without it harming them. I personally have had an experience where a pastor and where the preachers and where the teachers of the churches that I grew up in and frequented often talk about persecution towards Christians. You want to talk persecution? Jesus Christ is a perfect example of that, right? And what do? We love when someone becomes a martyr for a system or for a thing, because it is such a pure example of what sacrifice and love is.
And what righteousness looks like.
And what righteousness looks like. And I think what we don't realize that we're doing is we are persecuting these people in a community that just want to breathe, that just want to be free, and are not asking anybody else to be queer. Okay, we can't do that.
It's not the cooties.
No, and you know
it's not
what?
A circle, dot, dot.
Yeah, and if friends can be friends who are queer and who are not queer, and you just say, oh, that doesn't matter to me, and you keep on living, like, that is true acceptance.
How does that dictate my experience? And I think it's important to make sure that your identity is not so tied that someone else's identity is going to unravel everything that you stand for. If you identifying as a woman biologically, if that is so fragile that a trans woman is also identifying in that direction and it sends you into a tizzy that you're like, then what am I? You are still you.
Yeah.
It doesn't change anything.
Yep.
It truly has no major effect. Where it unfortunately does start to take negative effect is that when we see this legislation
Legislation
starts to take an effect where you see a lot that is passing is specifically targeted towards the minorities, specifically the transgender children. I'll put the children argument in there for people. I'll put it in there too. When we start to see that there are laws and there are policies that focus on taking away something from individuals, that actually sets a precedent for other states to do that. And we see that happening in Alabama. We see this happening in Mississippi. We see this happening in a lot of different areas. Massachusetts actually has 2 policies that are pending that are focused on preventing trans children from participating in high school sports. These are things that unfortunately have really harsh implications because that sets a precedent. That sets something like you have to obey. Civil rights was never actually going to fully be respected until it became policy. And that's why there was so much government movement behind it, because you can start a movement, you can start awareness, but unfortunately that's not going to make any change until you get it in legislation.
Yeah, right. A whole nother conversation. We'll get there into another time. Maybe that's another thing we can meet about, because that is quite a hot topic.
Like we got a lot. Ooh, and if anything like spoke to you, I want to know.
I know. Again, something that it really does tell you that we weren't even thinking about this 10 years ago. Like no one was giving a flying flip who was using what bathroom, and there was not a problem. It has become a problem because we have made it one. Again, if you want to write an email and you want to be upset, think back to going to your church, and I'm going to think back to going to my church and hearing about persecution that was happening in other countries, and Eastern European people, that I've met, that have come to churches that I've gone to that said, no, we literally had to read Bibles like in a basement under lock and key, and we are afraid of being persecuted. The queer community can understand that, I think, more than anybody. They get what that persecution is. They understand how it affects your life, and they want the same things that you want for your church, which is freedom. Freedom of expression, freedom to live as you so choose, and freedom to keep the peace between other worlds,
freedom
basically.
To be. And isn't that what the whole Constitution is made for? Is to have that freedom from totalitarianism, from monarchs, from dictatorships, from fascism. I'll throw the big F in there. It was specifically for that. And when it's being used as a weapon to take away, that's where we have to start looking at our environment. And we have to start asking ourselves, okay, who's no longer at the table? And why are they not here anymore?
Yes, why are they not here?
Why are they not here?
Why are they not here?
What perspective do they provide that threatens so much of your foundation?
Also, another thing I think that would be good to end with for anyone listening to think of is, why have I not been curious about this before, right? Why do we not want to know? Why do we feel bad when we're challenged? When really, if you care about truth, if you are curious and you love knowledge, the answer is not dependent whether you're right or wrong. It is dependent on you accepting what is. And this is what is. So.
And being able to hold a lot of truths at the same time.
Yes. Oh, I love it.
That's hard.
2 things,
it's
3
hard.
things.
It's hard to multitask.
It is hard.
But, you practice.
We practice.
You practice.
Practice makes perfect.
We're in a library of learning. What better place to be having these conversations?
So true. Yeah. By the way, library is free. Easy to get there.
You can rent so much stuff. You can rent a ghost detector.
Yeah, telescope I saw out there.
You can rent like an umbrella. Like there are so many things I didn't realize, and I feel like I am so totally not using my personal library. Not my personal library, but like the library in my hometown and here that I'm just not using. That I feel like I need to be, especially in this time of action, everybody. Look to your community.
Yes, use the tools you have.
Use the tools. And the library wants to give you so many tools. For free.
For free.
For free.
Bless 'em.
Who doesn't like free? In this economy.
Everybody.
Listen.
So Rose, thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
To end this, I would love if you could tell us what you think a song or album that you love that you think people should listen to in their lifetime.
Cake. And not like the actual cake, but it is a Canadian band. And that's what they're called, C-A-K-E. I think everyone should listen to their songs. You can even listen to like their first like top songs if you don't want to listen through the whole thing, because they have a lot of albums, I will say. But the reason why I think everyone should listen to it is because they write what can be perceived as radical songs, because they are looking at the world as what it is, and they are saying specifically what that is. Like, oh, that's capitalism.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that looks a lot like some warmongering going on over there. But they do it in such a very catchy song that you don't even realize what they're listening to. You don't even realize
that.
it.
Oh, that's a rebellious spirit I can get
Beautiful.
behind.
But they also have very like silly songs, like A Bucket Seat, which I did not know what it was until I had to like kind of Google it, because I had never heard the term a bucket seat. But apparently, and you can also Google this too, it's a seat in a car. So instead of having your individual, like your driver's side, your passenger side, the bucket seat is basically the whole seat. There is no like discrimination about where you can sit.
It's all connected.
And they're saying like, I just want to be close to my sweetheart. I want my sweetheart closer to me. And that's like the whole premise of the song. But then they also have songs about war pigs, basically, where they're focusing on people in power that truly are not losing anything, are forcing other people into wars that could lose everything.
Yeah.
So it makes you think, but they also give you like a little bit of fun stuff at the same time, because all this reading, I will not lie, is heavy reading. It's hard to read. So what I've been learning to keep my own like mental balance is like, you need to have some fun stuff.
Yeah.
You need to have some fun books, whether it's, you know, fan fiction, whether you're going into fantasy realm, you need to have something to balance it.
You got to have that jubilee.
You got to have the
you
jubilee.
You got to have that parade.
Whether you like it or not. And you know, it looks different for everybody.
Yeah.
But you need self-care in order to take care of the people around you. That's all I'm
Listen to
say.
some cake, have a parade, you know, get your sign and get some shade, wear that sunscreen.
Go to your library.
Go to your library and live your life.
Live your life and look around. See who's here, who's not there. And ask, oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
Why aren't they here?
Yeah. And as always, stay curious. Right. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was so exciting.
Okay. You're doing so good.